All right, guys, welcome back to Dudes Without Dads podcast. And today I've got a very special guest inside the house. He actually works with NBA players, elite military leaders, and Olympic athletes. Let's go. But what he's bringing today isn't just for the pros. It's for every dude who grew up in a home where dad wasn't there, wasn't right, or just left a mark he never meant to leave. Dr. Wayne Chappelle, also known as Dr. C, just co-authored a brand new book called Heal Your Hurting Mind.
My life was just spiraling downhill.
Depression, alcoholism, incarceration, deaths by despair.
The one guy who showed up is just Jesus.
If you can give a man clarity and community, he can start to live out his purpose.
You can break generational curses of alcoholism.
Welcome to Dudes Without Dads, the show that trains men how to become the dads they never had. Dr. C, welcome to the show. Before we get into the book, just tell us who you are in your own words, not the resume version, but who is Wayne Chappelle?
Well, I don't get that question very often, but I think it's a very important question to have. I would describe myself as a follower of Christ, as a husband and as a father, and as a man who loves to help people. I didn't use the title psychologist because I think it's too restrictive. And I'm not necessarily a fan of labels because it boxes us in. But a follower of Christ, looking to be and live a life according to his will and what he has for me, and to do the best job, both personally and professionally.
That's so good. How we answer that question reveals so much about how we view ourselves and how we navigate through this world. So it's my understanding that you have worked with elite performers, NBA guys, special forces, and all this. On the surface, those seem like the last dudes who would admit to be struggling emotionally. But what do you actually see when you get behind closed doors with those individuals that are high performers?
You know, it's interesting whether it's preparing for the battlefield or preparing for a professional sports arena or game, or even with the Olympic athletes that I've worked with. A very, very strong trait of them is drive, to excel, to succeed, to impress. And one of the most important things is that I see that I oftentimes have to work through with them is they oftentimes will equate their value and their worth based upon the outcomes that they have, either on the battlefield or in the game. And their sense of identity could be based upon, hey, I'm wearing this special operations beret, or I'm wearing this professional sports jersey. This is who I am. And oftentimes the place that we start is you're bigger than the battlefield and you're bigger than the baseline in terms of sports.
Mm. A lot of men that are listening right now, they didn't grow up with a dad, or they grew up with one, but that one did more damage than good. In your clinical experience, how much of what happens in our past actually shows up inside of a grown man's life, even if it's years later?
Our past is unavoidable. And what happens in our past really shapes very intently the beliefs that we develop about ourselves, who we are, why we're here, the purpose that we have, the beliefs that we have about other people, what relationships look like, what specific relationships, both in terms of friendships as well as marriages and families. And it also shapes deeply our beliefs about the world. So it's unavoidable. You can have both positive beliefs that are shaped based upon the experiences that you have, but you can also have some very negative beliefs. Mm-hmm. And these beliefs become so deeply ingrained in the way that we think that it shapes our thoughts and responses to life events so automatically that it often occurs without effort, kind of unconsciously. It's automatic thoughts, right? So I'll give you an example. If you grew up in an environment where perhaps it was poverty stricken, where people were pretty rough and not necessarily honest, and you watched a lot of people around you do hurtful things to others, you oftentimes will grow up seeing the world as being untrustworthy. That you'll see the world filled with wolves, and you'll oftentimes develop what I would call walls to protect yourself. And in some cases, those walls could be very adaptive for the environment that you were in and how you were growing up. But those walls are oftentimes unhealthy or maladaptive as you grow older, especially in terms of developing relationships that require trust, honesty, and vulnerability.
I'm trying to process what you said about building walls. Are there telltale signs for a dude who's built up walls that they don't even realize that they've actually created walls inside their lives?
Yeah, there's different types of walls. Some walls are based upon how much we let people into our life, especially in terms of sharing with them our vulnerabilities. And other walls are based upon how well we'll connect with our emotions, how much we'll recognize our emotions, and how much we'll allow ourselves to process our emotions. Now, walls aren't unhealthy per se. It's just a matter of how thick and deep those walls are and how willing you're willing to remove those walls in order to become the best version of you. So for instance, yes, the world is wicked. It does have challenges and wolves to it, but not everybody is wicked and not everybody is a wolf. And so you have to be able to recognize when it's appropriate to remove those walls or to invite people into you. And yes, it is important to be able to compartmentalize your emotions and put them in a box and put them on a shelf so that you can perform well under high demand and high pressure situations. But as a man, we also have to learn how to pull that box down and unpack our emotions with the people who are around us that we care and love and trust in order to have support from them, in order to have also emotional intimacy. And the reason for that is because you want to break the walls down emotionally and also relationally, because nobody ever becomes the best version of themselves by themselves. It's always with the people who we surround ourselves with, and the level of support emotionally, relationally that we get from them in order for us to get through some of the most difficult storms in life.
Have you met people that said, just get over it? Like, let's bury it. Let's put it in the past and just move on. Yes, my dad abused me. Yes, I've experienced childhood trauma, and that is the past, and I don't want to deal with it. Is there any danger? Can you not just forget about it and go on?
Yeah, so there are times in which the moment requires so much attention and so much of your energy that it may not necessarily be the time or the place to look at your past and to explore it and to understand it. But you don't want to avoid nor ignore your past, because your past is an important part of who you become, who you are, and oftentimes what you later become. So for instance, who you are today is likely different than who you were 2 years ago. And who you are a year from now should be a little bit different than who you are today. And so we want to be able to also set aside a time to explore our past, understand our past, so that we use our past as a way to shape us to become intentionally the man that we aspire to be. If you don't evaluate your past, if you don't look at your present, you can't, with any intention, make decisions that are informed about who you desire to be in the future. Does that make sense at all?
Yeah, it's really good. And sometimes I want to ask myself the question, in light of what's happened in our past, what has Satan stolen from us? Like, what am I meant or created to enjoy, but I'm actually not able to enjoy it because of the pain or the lack of dealing with something that's taken place in the past, which sets up this question right here. As a psychologist, you wrote a book with Craig Groeschel, and it's called Heal Your Hurting Mind. And what I'm curious about from a psychological standpoint is, what does a father wound actually do inside of the mind? Like below the surface,
Yeah.
what is actually taking place?
So that's good. So I think, and what a brilliant question, because we are all going to have, to some degree, father wounds, whether you grew up without a father or even with a father. And the reason for that is because our secular fathers are simply human beings. They are imperfect human beings, and they are going to make mistakes. And even when they think that they're doing well and they're doing good and they're being smart, in reality, they could be being harmful. And so father wounds apply to everyone. So let's put that out on the surface. And if somebody says, yeah, I had this great father who was absolutely amazing, he was wonderful, well, then you also have to take a step back and ask yourself, man, are you ignoring something in your past? Are you glossing over something because it's just too painful? Because I only know one perfect person. That person walked this earth 2,000 years ago. It's not me. It's not you. It's not your father. It's not mine. So therefore, you're not dishonoring your father by saying he wounded me. You are dishonoring your father by lying about him and saying he was perfect, or by saying, for the ones who did have present fathers, or by saying everything that my father did was absolutely horrible. Now, I'm going to address that in just a minute. However, your question was, do father wounds affect people, right, moving into the future, and how does it do this? Well, let's define a father wound as something that a father did to us or did not do for us. It could be an act of omission or an act of commission that hurt us and negatively shaped the way we think or feel about ourselves or the world in general. One father wound could be, for those who grew up without a father, a sense of abandonment. Hey, when I was 10, then my father left me, and so therefore I have issues about trust. I have issues of insecurity. And oftentimes that's taken into a relationship with somebody else. So all of a sudden you're now dating and you're in your young 20s. You never had a father around, or perhaps the father came in and out of your life unpredictably and said things to you, but was dishonest about it, or never followed through with it, or made promises that were always broken. That stuff's going to get carried straight into a relationship that you have with somebody else. You might project that onto the woman that you're starting to love, thinking she'll never be around, or it's just a matter of time before she leaves me, or I can never really trust anything that she says. Or that father wound could manifest itself by things that you do, such as, I can go ahead and say something truthful, but if I fall, I can maybe not tell the full truth. My father never told it to me, so I guess that's kind of what fathers do. Or I can say, yes, I'll do something, but not necessarily follow through with it, because that's kind of what my father did. Oftentimes, we default to what we experienced, even when we know it's wrong. So how about this father wound? Father doesn't know how to handle his anger, and so he ends up physically harming and beating you, right? Grabbing you, roughing you up, throwing you, leaving bruises on you. And you're thinking, man, that's painful. I'll never do that. So now you take that into becoming a father yourself, and you're screaming at your kid. You might cuss at him. You might label him as lazy and whatnot, but you're thinking, you know what? I'm okay, because I'm not beating on him. I'm not doing anything that I'm not doing what my father did to me, which was horrible. And because I'm not hitting him, I'm being a much better version. Well, no, guess what? You might not be hitting him with your fists, but you're hitting him with your words. And oftentimes those can be just as painful and lasting. Might not be physical abuse, but now it's emotional abuse. And there's those, So yes, there are many ways in which the experiences that we had, both with our mothers and with our fathers, that carry us into our relationships into the future.
Yeah, if I were to sum it up, it's affecting you more than you realize. And
Mhm.
just because you've buried it doesn't mean it's gone. It's still very much alive.
Your brain, your experiences with your father, whether he was absent or present, codes into your brain what masculinity looks like or doesn't look like, and how that should be manifested as you grow older. It is unavoidable, inescapable.
I want to thank you for taking time to listen to this story. And if there's something inside of here that is adding value to you, I want you to stop and hit subscribe. I am on mission to help men become the dads they never had. Many of us struggle with father wounds, addictions, identity issues, and really what we need is we need a model. We need to see people that have broken the patterns and come alongside of them. I want to simply invite you to join me on the journey. Every Thursday, we're going to release a new episode. Each episode is going to help you and others become the dads they never had. Hit subscribe and share with a friend. Now let's get back to the story. I've shared this with some friends, and I'm going to, ask my next question. But what I've realized, the older dude without a dad, the older I get, the more I realize all my frustrations are actually something from the past that's presenting itself in the future. So I appreciate you sharing. And so I've interviewed dudes whose dads have committed suicide, abusive fathers that have beat their kids, their moms. Um, how do you rebuild your identity when you look back on your own dad and you don't have a lot of respect, a lot of honor, you have a lot of brokenness? How does a dude start from scratch to rebuild their identity?
Okay, so this is very it's got some layers to it. The first layer is obviously recognizing that the relationship that you had with your father does transform and influence you, even in ways beyond your own recognition as you grow older. Either about, you could look back at your father and go, he served as an example of what not to do, so therefore I won't do that. Or in some cases, he can serve as an example of what to do. Now, if he served as an example of what not to do, that doesn't mean you know what to do, right? So your sense of identity, first and foremost, is going to be to some degree shaped by him. And it's important to think about, contemplate how. Number two, you do not have to become your father. There might be things that you are genetically influenced by because you carry your father's genes, but it doesn't mean that you have to continue that cycle of problems, because you have full control and full agency on that. And it's your choice. It's your decision. So your influence, the identity that you have, can be directly correlated with the man that you desire to be and aspire to be based upon how God's designed you to be, and not necessarily follow in the footsteps of your father.
So let me interrupt you there.
Yeah.
So just for our listeners, you said it is possible that you can create a new identity, your identity from the past, or you don't have to be like your father. You actually have hope. And why is that important, that a dude knows that they actually have a choice here?
Because you are the architect of your life. No matter what pressures, temptations, or influences that you feel, to include genetically, you are ultimately the architect of your life. God has given us the agency to make choices in our life on who we desire to become. And so you may have beliefs about the world or other sort of influences that have shaped you in terms of how you think, but ultimately, or how you respond to life events, but ultimately it's your decision. So you can become who you aspire to be. It's not easy. It's going to take work, but anything worth pursuing takes a lot of work and effort.
So once a dude realizes that, you know what, I don't have to be that dude, what's the next layer that we're going to be building upon?
Well, I want to talk to the guys who've had some pretty rough experiences, right? The ones where perhaps they were abandoned, or they watched their father commit suicide, or drink themselves into alcoholism, or were physically abused. In our lives, we are often taught, even by pop psychology, that if you've had really rough experiences in your life and you've been traumatized, therefore you're broken. And therefore, because you're broken, you will always be broken. And you're a victim. And so I like to approach it from a different perspective, sort of like the battlefield, right? We face the battlefield and watch wicked people do very wicked things, and we see some of the most worst of humanity. And yet in those dark moments of humanity, we can actually transform ourselves into something stronger. So you can look back at the experience that you had with your father, whether it was physical or emotional abuse, beyond measure, and oftentimes beyond the imagination of what others may have experienced. But that doesn't have to define your identity, nor does it represent your self-worth, and it doesn't have to plague you the rest of your life. In fact, I want to use an analogy because the mental health sciences are oftentimes mimic the principles of physical health sciences. And I want to give you the analogy of the diamond. The diamond is made from very worthless carbon material. But that carbon material is underneath intense pressure. It is underneath intense pressure and heat for a long period of time, enough that it would crush pretty much anything. And as this pressure and as this heat forms this worthless carbon material, it turns into a diamond. And the value of a diamond is a direct correlation with the light that shines through it. Boy, there's a lot of spiritual analogies there. The value of a diamond is the direct correlation of the light that shines through it. Well, with that being said, we revere a diamond not only because it's beautiful and it's the most expensive gem because of its beauty. We revere that diamond because it's also the hardest. We use diamond tip blades and other sort of processes of the diamond to cut through rock and granite that would crush most anything else. And so negative experiences in our life and our childhood do not have to form wounds. In some cases, they can actually form diamonds. You can be in a situation in which you reflect upon the history and think, man, my alcohol use or my ego or my pride today is the result of some of the trauma that I experienced back then. But you don't have to let that be the case. In fact, you can use the trauma that you experienced, the loss, the pain, the difficulties with your father as a way to shape you in becoming a stronger, better man, not just simply for yourself, but for others. So I look at trauma as one, it is unavoidable. It is a part of life. We are broken human beings, and infallible, and we're going to make mistakes. And as a result, we're going to do things that we think are good, but in reality, we hurt others. And so you take that trauma, you reflect upon it, but not necessarily as a victim, but as a survivor. There's a difference. If you perceive yourself as a victim, then you're thinking, whoa, there's helplessness. If you see yourself as a survivor, there's hopefulness. Big difference between helplessness and hopefulness. Yeah. And as a survivor, there's a sense of agency that I have control in terms of how I respond to the experiences that I've had. And I can either have the experiences break me, or I can have it transform me. And when you look at that, when you look at your trauma that you had in your life with your father, and you say, I'm going to use this to transform me to become a better version of me, now you're approaching life with a greater sense of resilience and the warrior mindset. Bad things happen to good people all the time. And life is filled with uncertainty, unexpectedness, and trauma, period. And once we embrace that and then look at it as though I have a choice. So I'll give you an example. I'm working with a guy, right? And he's looking at me going, man, how could you say that I can transform and become a better version of me when I was raped at a young age, at the age of 12 or 13 by another man, and my father wasn't there to protect me, or he dismissed it. And a couple weeks go by, and he's in a group, and he's sitting down, and he tells me about he's in college, and he's sitting down with this other kid, and this kid starts to describe, man, I'm going through this rough time, going through this rough experience. And he describes something that's similar that happened to him as a young boy, but more younger, at the age of 8 or 9. And this man that I was working with in therapy is listening intently to this other man, and he's able to identify, relate, process, support, and strengthen that man. And I go, okay, there's your first gem. You were a stronger version of you, helping another man become a stronger version of him because of the experiences that you went through yourself. Yeah. Could you have done that? Could you have related? Could you have understood had you not gone through the same experience? And he says, there's no way. I would have reacted and said things that I thought were helpful, like just get over it, when in reality it would have been painful. But because I had the experience and could share with him, that moment strengthened him. I go, there's your second gem. You take the experiences that you've had in life that are terrible, painful, and we transform them to become better versions of ourselves. We develop the habit of looking at our past as an opportunity to learn. And then when you do that, there becomes hope and transformation, so that whatever comes your way in the future, you've learned how to cope with that, to turn bad experiences into diamonds, and not just simply stuff that you're stuck in the mud with. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And I was thinking about, you work with people who give their lives to win a gold medal or to carry out a mission that really does carry a lot of weight for a lot of different individuals, or even winning, a championship, inside of sports.
Yeah.
Have you seen guys achieve, because they turn their pain into diamonds, and then once they achieve the thing they were looking to achieve, it didn't bring the healing they were hoping for it to bring? If so, would you maybe help the dude process that no matter what you pursue? I mean, surely there's things that are worth living for and pursuing. I don't know. Do you understand what I'm trying to process?
I know exactly. So like when you're working with like the upper 1%, or people that are exceptionally talented and very gifted based upon what they've developed over time, whether it's the battlefield and you're in special operations where you take 100 of the most fittest, smartest men and you whittle it down to the top 5, right? And you win you get the beret, or whether you're a Olympic athlete who gets the gold medal or a silver medal, or whether you're a football or basketball player that gets you the championship trophy. What's interesting about that is once you get that, it becomes hollow. You're like, wait a minute, where do I go from here? And if your purpose was entirely based upon trying to win a trophy, you'll realize that once you get that trophy, the high of that trophy doesn't last. Right. It is all about the purpose and the man you choose to be and the impact you have on the lives around you that are most important. So can I give you an example, a real world example?
Yes, sir.
Do you know who the most decorated Olympian is with the most gold medals?
I mean, I'm going to say Michael Phelps, but that was probably
well done. He has 20 plus gold medals. Do you know what he's also known for after he finished his Olympic career, after all those gold medals?
I believe depression.
Yes, he actually looked at himself in the mirror and said, I'm going to die. I feel empty and I feel hollow and I have no sense of purpose. Where do I go from here? What is my calling in life? Because I thought my calling in life was just to win the trophies and the medals. And here's a guy who's got like, a $50 million sponsorship through Gatorade. He's well-known icon throughout the world. He has a level of attention and celebrity status beyond measure. And yet he's looking at himself who's hollow. And after he wanted to kill himself. And so he went in, he was hospitalized, he got treatment. And afterwards he came out and he says, man, I'm bigger than the trophies. My life is based upon purpose, not trophies. And in some cases, a trophy for a man could be money. It could be business. It could be the number of hits they get on social media for videos that they make. It could be something that we chase that is some form of idol worship. And once you realize you're bigger than that, and you have a life based upon purpose, and you can even take the pain that you have and transform it into purpose. Now you're living a life, I don't want to say of happiness, because happiness is a fleeting experience, but you're living a life based upon contentment, satisfaction, and fulfillment. And like I said, happiness is very fleeting. And if we want it, we need it. But there's a difference between sometimes happiness and fulfillment.
That's so good. It reminds me of, I think it's Viktor Frankl and was it Nietzsche? And they had two different ideas as far as the meaning of life. Are you familiar with this quote?
Oh, yes. Man's Search for Meaning, for sure, with Viktor Frankl. And Nietzsche, who's the guy who's like, hey, man, God's dead.
And they were on, this, but just for our listeners, they were on this conversation, which is a powerful conversation, whether you're running a business or your family or you're trying to break generational cycles. Nietzsche believed that man's purpose was pleasure. And Viktor Frankl said, no, I don't think so. I think man distracts himself with pleasure when he has no real purpose. And so it's trying to figure out this idea of how do you move from this idolatry of pursuing pleasure to flipping the script and saying, I'm actually going to change it. I'm going to live my life for the people around me versus for myself.
That's right. Pleasure is all about being very self-centered and self-focused, whereas purpose is all about other-focused. When you take a step back and you realize where does the greatest level of fulfillment come from, it's oftentimes based upon the shared experiences that you have with others that are both positive and meaningful. You notice I didn't say money in there or trophies, right? So shared positive experiences that are meaningful. And those meaningful experiences are usually experiences that build stronger connections, emotional and relational connections of trust and communication and support and rapport. Or it's we're collectively moving together to achieve a goal. But the only way we can achieve this goal is if we do it together. And then you cross the finish line or you achieve the goal, and now you're sharing and celebrating because you did it based upon the fact that you had that experience with other people, and you could have never have accomplished that by yourself. So what's interesting is I said earlier that nobody ever becomes the best version of themselves by themselves. It's also very true that nobody's fulfillment comes from oneself. Their fulfillment usually comes through the collective combination of others. And that includes, I'd like to describe, if it's okay, a wingman, and what a wingman looks like. Because men need wingmen. Everybody needs a wingman. And we have an idea in our mind what a wingman looks like based upon what secular society is going to tell us. But what does a true, authentic wingman look like? Now, I captured this in the book with Craig in some of the sections, and Craig would probably describe me as a wingman for him. So a lot of times we think that a wingman is somebody who will provide pleasure. Hey, you're not doing so well. Let's go down to the bar. Let's drink. You're not doing so well. Let's go to the strip club. Oh, you're not doing so well. Let's go to the casino. Let's go out and do something fun that's pleasurable. Or a wingman who just says really nice things to you to lift you up, or a wingman who won't cross you or say anything that upsets you or conflicts with you. But that's really not a wingman. Wingmen are men who live a life of principle and integrity,
That's so good.
a life consistent with the life that God has designed them for. They speak truth. They are strong, not weak, but they are strong, both in terms of their composure of their emotions and how well they navigate their relationships, and they take care of themselves physically. Now, you can be a strong wingman even in a wheelchair as long as you're taking care of yourself to the very best of your ability physically with what you're capable of. But a wingman will also punch you in the face. And you're like, wait a minute, what? A wingman will punch me in my face? Yeah. You need a wingman who will protect you from yourself. Everybody has vulnerabilities, and the adversary knows what those vulnerabilities are, and he's going to pull on them. And the best way the adversary works is he's wanting you to do something that is destructive, selfish, painful, but he wants you to think that you're justified doing it. He wants you to think you're benevolent in doing it. He wants you to think that it's good that you're doing it. You could be like, man, your wife doesn't know how to communicate with you. Your wife is like emotionally doesn't know how to validate you. And when you walk home through a tough day and you walk through the door, she doesn't really greet you. Oh, and your wife isn't really interested in sex as much as you are. Man, you don't deserve her. She doesn't deserve you. You know what? You should let her know. You should give her a big chewing out verbally. And by the way, there's somebody else out there for you. Somebody else. Look, let's just go to the bar, hang out. If another woman comes by, flirt with her. If she looks better, if she has the characteristics of a woman that you think is much more desirable, screw your wife, man. Separate. And oh, by the way, the kids are always better without you around. When they see you guys arguing, man, the adversary is going to play on you so hard, and you're going to be convinced, and you're not going to know it. This is how the adversary works. Like that, in many cases, he wants to keep you blind. I have no idea it was a problem. I thought what I was doing was great. Or I knew it was a problem. I knew I had some issues, but I didn't think it was that big of a deal. Wants you to keep you complacent. Oh, I knew it was a problem. Needed to fix the marriage. I needed to be a little bit more intent. But I was so distracted by these other things, I didn't prioritize it. And it grew. And the problem became more, or despair. Man, I knew it was a problem. I wanted to do something about it. But I felt helpless and hopeless. So I didn't do anything. And you need a wingman that'll come around and punch you in the face when you need it, because you're blind to it, or complacent, or distracted, or in despair, and say, look, man, you're better than this. Go home, work with your wife, be the man to have the uncomfortable but respectful conversation. Be the man when you walk through and say, look, man, I'm going to be present. Oh, by the way, many men will think that what they're doing is very benevolent by providing. Man, I'm working 60, 70, 80 hours a week. I'm providing them a standard of living that is well above most others. But that provision is at the expense of presence. I missed a soccer game. I didn't go to the basketball game. Hey, I really didn't put time and energy into the Valentine's thing with my wife. Or it's been a while since we've been on a date night that was really romantic. That's exactly how he wants. You need a wingman that come along and says, hey, bud, don't be stupid. I'm going to punch you in the face. I'm going to drag your ass out of this bar where you're at, or I'm going to drag you out of work, and I'm going to bring you back home. You need to have a wingman who's tough. By the way, Josh, I'm on a roll here. There's no benevolence in being weak, ever. If somebody comes up to you and you fall, like if somebody says, if somebody comes up to you and you give in because you're being nice, but you're too weak to say no, either no to the enemy in terms of the pornography, no to, hey, I need to cut my drinking to just 2 drinks tonight, not to the point of intoxication. No to the business deal in which you're exploiting somebody else or you're lying on your taxes, whatnot. There's no benevolence in being weak. If you turn your other cheek because that's the only option you have when somebody's striking you, you're just weak. If you turn the other cheek because you choose to, but if you wanted to, you could pummel that guy into the ground. That's benevolence, because that's self-control and that's discipline. If you keep saying yes, or you give into things because you're thinking you're nice, but in reality, it's because you're just weak, there's no benevolence in that. Part of masculinity is being able to be strong. And that's not only to simply fight back, but also to have emotional restraint and to say no and to live a life of purpose. We're designed to be warriors. We're designed, and the first part of being a warrior is mentally. And I want to throw something out there, Josh. Is it Josh or Joshua?
Whatever you call me by.
Well, what do you prefer? I want to say what you
Joshua.
prefer. Joshua. Man, Joshua, a warrior in the Bible. Joshua is a warrior in the Bible, if you think about it, right? I mean, amazing. I named my son Joshua. But I take a look at this and I take a step back and I go, okay, when we train men, we not only want to train them to be strong in terms of their faith, but we also want them to be strong emotionally and socially. We want to train them so they can identify their emotions, and manage their emotions in such a way that they can survive and thrive underneath extraordinary pressures and temptations. But we also want to make them strong socially and honest and speak truth and to love and to be altruistic, to rescue, but also to just resource, to understand that, yes, you can find benevolence in feeding the hungry by giving him bread, but there's also more benevolence in being strong and saying, I'm going to give you a fishing pole so you can feed yourself. We have to look at how we are strong, and in our past we figure out where our wounds are, and then moving forward we figure out who we want to be. So anyway, I could go off for like hours, so I'll pause for just a moment.
No, it's so good. You've unpacked so much that almost requires multiple conversations, because when we talk about raising our children, we are trying to do something we never saw anybody do for us. And so, when we say, how do you help them with their emotional IQ? How do you help them with being able to socialize with others? There's so many great conversations to dig in. I'm just going to pick two as we start to land the plane. Number one is, you mentioned finding a wingman. And I'm thinking about the dude who's like, there ain't nobody, everybody is crooked, wicked, and going to HELL. Where are they going to find somebody that'll actually punch them in the face if they're going to do something dumb? Where do you find a wingman? Do you have an incredible story of overcoming the home that you were raised in? Or maybe the father wounds that were placed inside your life? If so, I want to share it with other dudes without dads. Simply go to dudeswithoutdadspodcast.com and apply to be a guest on the show. The reason it's important to share your story is because when you share what God has done for you, it helps other men believe that God can do it for them, and He can. To share your story, head over to Dudes Without Dads Podcast today.
That is a great question. They're there. They are out there, and oftentimes you will find them in places you didn't expect. First of all, you're more likely to find a wingman in a church and in a men's group and on what I would call the men's retreat in a mancation. You're more likely to find him there than you will in a strip club or a bar. Yet you're more likely to find a strong wingman in athletic organizations that support Christ, or that you know that this is a man that's on the sports field and who's engaged in that, yet has a strong faith and is willing to pray. Pray for where you can find that wingman, because it's very likely you have them around you, but you just don't see them. Let me give you an example. Tony Cardello is a strong businessman in Kansas City. He has like dealerships, probably the largest dealerships in Kansas City. And he has a really rough past. He a kind of an absent father from his life at times, served 4, 5, 6, 7 years in federal prison at Fort Leavenworth, dealing narcotics for the mafia, came out full on tattooed. And if you ran into him in a back alley, you'd be like, dude, whoa, this guy's going to be like, he's a monster. And yet he changed his life, shaped his life, and now is probably one of the most remarkable, strongest Christians I've ever seen, and is shaping the lives of others through the purpose that he has. And he's a great wingman, and the place that you're going to find him is in a car dealership. But he wears his faith on his chest proudly. He has a social media podcast called TC Stronger, which is all about making men stronger versions of themselves. And stronger is the acronym that he uses as a value to define his life and who he wants to live by on a daily basis. Today, I'm going to wake up and I'm going to be stronger. So I just want to encourage people to pray, keep their eyes open, and find the man who lives a life according to values, not trophies.
When you say things like you say, find a man who lives with a set of values, not with a set of trophies, that's a mic drop. And, you know, for a dude that's listening, or someone shared this podcast with them, they could be even saying, what are values? Like, and I know that sounds so simple and so like small of a question.
Yeah.
But I don't know if dudes without dads always get it when it comes down to, hey, you need to be choosing your friends versus letting your friends choose you. And these are because they didn't have nobody. That whoever, you know, accepted them into a gang or showed love or expression of anything, you move to that. And so you don't think about value driven decisions. You think about, well, I mean, if they show me love or support, I'm going to just roll with them. Yeah,
let me give you a classic example. So you can have a guy that says, man, I'm really loyal. I love this value of loyalty. And so if I call this guy up, he's going to be there and he's going to support me and he will have my back. And then he'll take me to the bar and the strip club. And so, okay, great. He was there to help you functionally, and he was there for a shoulder to cry on, but then he took you in this direction that actually was unhealthy and separated you from your wife and your kids, right? So a good wingman, and wingmen aren't perfect, right? But a good wingman will be honest. He will be loyal. He will be committed. He will be caring. And what I mean by caring is he will love you even when it's inconvenient. He will be emotionally composed. So if he sees you starting to emotionally unravel, he's not going to unravel with you. He's actually going to help you stay composed so you can think clearly. He's a man of self-discipline. So if he says what he's going to do, he's going to do it. And so if he says he'll show up, he's going to be there on time, or he's going to be early. He is a man of excellence, so that when he does pursue something, it's not just like, let me just put a half-ass effort in. If I do this, I'm going to do this well. I'm going to do the ordinary with excellence every day. And he's a man of faith. He's a man who reads the Bible. He's a man who's willing to share with you his relationship with Christ. He's a man who's willing to share with you his own faults and his own mistakes. But more importantly, he's a man who will speak truth into you, and he will be strong enough so that if he sees you doing things that take you away from the man that God aspires you to be, he will be an obstacle, and he'll make it difficult for the adversary to win.
Yeah. I've got one last question, and I just want our listeners to know that it's okay to ask, it's okay to seek, it's okay to knock, and that's actually how you find and get the dudes to say yes. Even if it takes you 4 or 5 different attempts to call, to email, to drive to the dude's house that you want to mentor you or to be your wingman, you have to ask, you have to seek, you have to knock. You can't wait on God to have that person show up at your door. If you want that wingman in your life, go identify them and go get them. And so
Yeah.
this is my final question for you, Dr. C. I'm going to drop you right now inside of a chair, and right across in front of you is the silent type. It's a dude who doesn't talk to anybody about anything, and especially about his emotions or feelings or his past.
Mhm.
He's got stuff, but he don't want to talk about nothing with nobody. He's right in front of you. What do you want him to know?
A couple of things. One is I understand he's got walls, and those walls are helpful and they are valuable. And so his silence is an analogy for the wall. I don't want to open up. I don't want to talk. I got a lot going on up here, but I want to keep it there. And I would tell him that those walls are okay for a time, but they're not okay to stay up. That if he ever wants to be the man who he desires to be and aspires to be, the greatest of us, always learn how to take those walls down and invite people in. And it's okay for him to put those walls up as he walks out into the secular world and has to deal with the battles and the pain, the frustrations and the challenges. But in order for him to constantly grow and be the best version of him, he has to learn how to take those walls down at the right time. And the reason for that is because it's not just for him. It's for his son. It's for his daughter.
So good.
Because our children will mimic our behavior. And if we don't learn and model for them how to take those walls down, they'll do the same darn thing. And if you want and every parent wants a better life for their children. So you're doing a really good job modeling for your son how to stay stoic underneath high pressure conditions and how to keep it in. Good. But it's not sufficient. In fact, if he doesn't learn how to let people in, he won't ever become the best version of himself either. So this isn't just about you. You're sitting there going, man, I don't want to open up and talk because this is about me and I'm uncomfortable. Well, you're right. It is uncomfortable for you, but don't be selfish. Ooh, that's a little bit of a different sort of spin on it, isn't it? You're being selfish, not for me, but for your children, for your family. If he's sitting there across from me and he says, well, my father abandoned me. Yeah. Well, you're also abandoning your son emotionally. You might be present at home, but if you don't know how to drop those walls, you're still absent.
Yeah, so good. Just want to remind our listeners as we bring it to a close, it's the Father's will to heal you, to restore you. And although sometimes it's very painful to face the things that have caused us a ton of pain and grief and maybe even trauma of not really understanding why certain things happen the way they do, there is a Father, there's a God who loves you. And Dr. C, thank you so much for sharing a little bit of the wisdom. Do you have something you want to share?
Yeah, I got two lasting statements.
Okay.
Romans 8:28. Man, we're in Christ. God will work everything for good for us. That means everything, to include the problems and the pain that we had in our life from our fathers. Romans 8:28. And then also Romans is it 8:38 through 39? Nothing can separate us from the love of God. Nothing. And so as men, sometimes we do things that we're ashamed of or we're embarrassed of, that might be part of the father wounds that we carry forward. And we're thinking, man, nobody can love me or care for me or like me because of who I become. I'm going to tell you, there's nothing that can separate you from God's love because he loves you unconditionally.
So good. Yeah, I think there's lies that sometimes we believe that functions as truth, even when it's a lie. Craig Groeschel quote at the very end of the podcast. And here is the idea, is that we end up believing that we've done things to other people that can't be forgiven, and that leads us to a grave, and it creates generational cycles. Well, that's not biblical. You know, the Bible makes it clear that while we were yet sinners, Christ died for us. And so during your most dirty moments, Christ died for that. You can be forgiven, you can have healing, and you can have restoration, and you can break generational cycles for your family and their families to come. Dr. C, thank you so much for being here today.
Yes.
The book is called Heal Your Hurting Mind. Go grab it now. It's number 5 on the New York Times. It's been such a blessing to have you today, and I'll see you in the future.
Awesome, Joshua.
Forgiveness is more for you than them. I had inner peace for the first time in my life.
It's just Jesus. Just Jesus.